Well, welcome to the Champions Podcast for our next episode. And today we have a really special guest. We have Heather's mom, Julie McCoy. And I'm really excited about this episode just to hear her story and what it's been like for them. They'll kind of probably tag team off of each other like mom and I did a few episodes ago. And so I'm really looking forward to this. Heather, is there anything you want to say before we get started?
Just excited to have my mom on and get her perspective of what it's been like to have determination and faith.
I love it. I love it. So, Miss Julie, why don't you just take the ball and run with it and share what you're comfortable with, what's on your heart, and what has life been like for you?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And as I tell you, I'm not a picture or video person, but I'm more of an in-person speaker. But we'll make the best of it. Um, of course, I grew up in the church, and I have had faith since I was small. But over the years, like everyone else, your faith grows and you have different perspectives on life when different things arise. I had my oldest daughter, Kelly, in 1984. Um, and, being normal and had that first. And then along came Heather in 1992. And we found that things that we didn't know actually happened from birth. Heather was not well. And by the time she was 5 weeks old, we tested her for several things in Charleston and found out that she had cystic fibrosis. And it was a shock. And we did not know much about that because you didn't have all the internet and all this Google and everything that you could look up stuff. But at 7 weeks old, the test results actually confirmed. At 5 weeks old, the doctor knew pretty much that that was what was going to, he thought it was going to be because he had done a lot of research in Missouri at that time with cystic fibrosis. So we had to learn a lot quickly of how to care for her. There were different things that her digestive system did not digest foods well. And so we had to have special milk that had a enzyme in it that actually digested her milk and then later on her foods. There were a lot of things too with lungs, the kidneys, the liver, CF affects, every organ there is. And we learned to do a lot of things at home to keep her out of the hospital so that she wouldn't stay so sick. We did IVs at home, breathing treatments at home. Then later on down the road, it was feeding tubes and, doing overnight feeds or, it's just grown over the years, of course, adding different things. Now, Heather did get to a point where she went to school, and stayed fairly well until about the sixth grade. And when sixth grade came, things totally changed with her. And she was then homebound. So the teachers came to her. But she tried to play the clarinet with a lung disease in the sixth grade band. That didn't fare so well. So she switched up later on and taught herself guitar and drums because going out in public to places as sick as she got would, she'd be susceptible to germs, extra germs. So she was self-taught. trying to balance out a sick child with a well child. And of course, Kelly was into everything. She was into, voice and piano, and she was in choirs at school, and they traveled. And so I tried to be there for her at all her occasions that I could be, but yet still trying to take care of Heather and balance the household and, being married. And later on, I took care of my mother-in-law for a year until she passed away. So I was trying to balance out all these things. That's when your faith comes in even more, because there are so many times you feel so overwhelmed that you just pray that, Lord, just give me the strength. I know all that thing of saying that, he puts on you no more than you can handle. Sometimes you get to that point saying, Lord, I'm at my end. So, you got to extend this out a little bit more so I can handle that extra. But leaning on my faith is what really carried me through a lot of this over the years. Without that, I don't think I would have made it. It probably would have really overwhelmed me and put me in a state of depression or something like that. But being strong in your faith really carries you. And I've always tried to teach my girls, anytime you go through the bad times, you really have to lean on your faith. Be steadfast and strong in it. But also during the good times, you've got to, say, rejoice in the good things and thank him for those as well. Heather, of course, got sick. When she was about 9 or 10, her disease took a turn. We went to UNC Chapel Hill because they sent us up there. They didn't think she was going to make it. Of course, we had, scares off and on since she was born. But at that time, Heather became really ill. And so we went up to their center, CF center up there. And Heather was not in a great place at that time. And so I found myself trying to be extra strong for her because she was so scared. When they start talking about transplant at the age of 9 or 10, and taking your lungs out and putting somebody else's in there, she didn't understand that as well. So, it was really hard. But with them and, all the good people that were there, and a lot of them were good Christian people, and it helped. It helped her to understand a little more about what was going on with her body, and helped me learn a lot more on how to help her get through this phase. And they didn't think she was going to come home. She really got too sick really at that time for a transplant. And she was not in a place herself, mentally and emotionally, to really get through that, because it's a tough thing. You've got to be prepared to do that. So we spent 2 months up there. Heather got home, by the grace of God and all the help there. But we knew that things were going to eventually be in that direction. So in 2011, Heather became really sick again. She's always been sick, but to the point of where, okay, her body is really declining. Her lungs are damaged so much now from all the infections and the disease that it's time to think about transplant again. So in 2012, the doctor sent us to, first of all, because of insurance being out of state, it was a little hard. So UNC didn't weren't able, I should say, to be able to do that. So we were sent to Duke, and Duke fought to get the insurance across the state lines to be able to be considered for transplant. So we went through that part and did all the testing. Well, Heather had problems with her swallowing, and I know a lot of people wouldn't understand what swallowing got to do with transplant. Well, it's because of the reflux that she had so bad that if they transplant your lungs, they don't want you to reflux into the new lungs. So we went through that, and they said, well, if you can, we can't do transplant with this issue, but if you can improve this, and we're going to try to treat it and come back and you can pass this swallow test, then we can consider you. So I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. Lord, we've gotten this far. You know how sick she is. Please don't let this just be what causes her not to be able to live longer. For them to turn her down and not be able to do the transplant. And as he's come through always, we went back. She had her test again, and they said, yes, we'll do the transplant. Well, all praise goes to him, for getting us through that. So we were going to have to relocate, but we didn't have to relocate. After doing the testing again in July, we didn't go until the end of August. So we moved up to Durham, and of course, not knowing anyone up there. And I worked remotely because I was working. And luckily, my job let me do that. And so we stayed from the end of August until April of the next year, because Heather had to go through rehab, 3 months of rehab, to build the body up. And then I'm sure, as Heather's told you in hers, she had 3 dry runs. And dry runs means that, you get called, they call in different people. They don't know who's actually going to get the organs, but you're called in anyway. Well, either the lungs weren't viable for anyone or they went to someone else. So the first time we got the call, we were actually going to dump the trash off at the dump at the area at the apartment, and the call came in. And so, that was our first time. So you were all excited and you were trying to rush and get to the hospital. And, you're praying the whole time, Lord, please let this be it. If it's thy will. And we get to the hospital and you don't realize that, I really didn't need to be here this early, because it was a long wait. So that was a dry run. Second time, we were sitting in a restaurant. We had just ordered our food, had gotten our drinks, and she gets a call. So we had to tell the waitress, we'll pay for the drinks, but please cancel our order. She just got a call, for us to go for a possible lung transplant. And so we went. We didn't go quite as fast as we did the first time, but we still went. So it was a long wait. Again. So then we went back home, and I was like, Lord, I know it's coming in your time, but you know how sick she's getting. And I mean, Heather was not doing well at all. So then we had another call, and we were like, well, we're just not going to go even as fast as we did the first 2 times, because we'll just have to wait and wait and wait and wait. So we got there, and we didn't realize that her friend had gotten called in, her best friend. And it was on, the day before Halloween.
Hmm.
And so her friend actually felt so bad and her family, because this was going to be her friend's second time and Heather's first. And I told them, don't feel bad. This is not, it wasn't Heather's time, and the Lord had not intended this. He intended it for her. And so we were so happy, and we had prayed hard for a friend, and we knew Heather's was coming. We just didn't know when. And so it was the day before my birthday in November.
Hmm.
And Heather had actually signed her papers to be listed on her dad's birthday, which was October 1st. And so that's when she got all the calls after that. And so here we were, fourth time. And I'm thinking, might not be a go. We don't know. I'm still praying, Lord, if this is it, please let it be, be the right timing. So we get to the hospital. Before that, her dad was getting ready to go come back to Sumter, where we lived at the time. And he was going to walk out the door, and Heather got the call. I said, wait. She's got a call. And of course, he had come all those other times and had to wait and then had to go back. But we said, no. I said, I got a feeling this is it. This is it. And so it actually ended up being the call. And the feelings you have when you know that they say this is a go is undescribable. And of course, we called everybody else, and Kelly comes and brings my granddaughter, and then her brother Jason comes, and of course it's a long wait, and I could not leave and go to the chapel, but I went to a place, which was kind of weird because in a hospital it's kind of hard to go anywhere if you can't leave the area to go. So I went to the restroom, nobody was in there, and I'm saying my prayers because I didn't want to be disturbed. And I said, Lord, I want you to give me the peace to know that this is going to be okay. She's going to be okay. And guide the surgeon's hands and all those that are taking care of her. And don't let me stress out over this. And all of a sudden, it was like I just had a peace. I knew that everything was going to be okay. I knew she was going to come through this surgery. And I just didn't worry because he had it.
Now,
And
that
he had her.
background was totally different than when I had the second, because we all were a little more panicked the second time around just because of the complications. But for the most part, my first transplant went really smooth. And I credit mom because obviously God Almighty is number one, but without having the faith and determination, having a strong mom and being there, I mean, she was there every second, didn't really even leave the hospital room, that you have to have a good support system to make. I mean, you can be as mentally and emotionally and physically strong as you want to be, but every transplant person needs somebody.
Well, a lot of times I pull my strength from you, Heather, because you are a very strong individual, and you are a beacon of light you are inspiration to a lot of people, and you helped me become stronger in my faith as well. Um, even though I had it just watching you go through everything that you had to go through and suffer through, um, brought me closer in my faith, and to be strong and to be strong for you. There are many times, I'm not going to tell you that I didn't go off somewhere in the closet a lot of times, because I would say I'm in there doing stuff, taking care of stuff. And I was crying my eyes out because I just had to release it, and I was worried at some points, because I'm human. But, and then a lot of times you cry in the shower because, you can let the water come down on you, and nobody knows any different, because I didn't want to show you weakness. I didn't want to show you that I was worried sometimes. And I wanted to be strong for you. And so, and yeah, sometimes it's hard. And I've known Champ all his life, and we're distantly kin to him. But I remember a time when you both were in the hospital in MUSC, when you both were going through things. And I went and visited. You couldn't, but I visited him. And, you both are strong, and you give so many people inspiration and hope and strength when they see your faith and how strong you are in it. So it helps others. And, everyone's so much better for knowing you both. But I'll have to tell you this one little story. Heather always has had to take a lot of pills. So when she was 5 and she was in kindergarten, she thought that she wasn't going to take her medication. So she pushed it under the TV on the bar when she was eating breakfast. So I take them to school, and I come back, and Heather, I found all her pills. So I gathered them all up. And so I went to the school and had them pull her out of class. And I didn't fuss at her then. I just had her take them. And I told her, I said, we'll have a talk when you get home this afternoon. So she knew she was going to have to stew over that all day long on what was Mama going to do when I got home. So when she got home, I told her this story. And some people said I was a little too much with it, but I wanted to make a point to her, because if I didn't drive the point home, it may not have had the impact on her that it did. So I told her this story. I said, Heather, when you don't take your pills, it can cause a lot of problems. I said, do you remember your kitten that you had that died? And she said, yes, ma'am. And I said, well, when you don't take your medications to help you and to help keep you going and keep you alive, that's what's going to happen. You could end up like your kitten. And of course, for a 5-year-old, it's kind of hard to understand death anyway, but I tried to bring that in about the cat because she had never been really that close to someone that had passed away. So I wanted her to, other than she knew that when good people died, they believed in Jesus and accepted him, that they would go to heaven. She realized that by me saying about the kitten, that if she didn't take care of herself, she would be just like that, and we'd be burying her. So that struck with her, and she never missed taking her pills again. So, some people might have, thought that was a little too much, but I had to try to make sure that I explained it enough to her so that she would understand. And I never had any more trouble with her with taking her pills. Um, and like Heather said, her second transplant, I'm gonna jump on over, was not as easy as her first. She did exceptionally well with the first transplant. When Heather went into rejection, it was a hard road. And it was painful the first time when your lungs aren't working and you don't have much lung function. But I think for Heather, with the second one being in rejection, was harder. The first time you have your own lungs and, you've had them all your life up to that point, and now you're dealing with, transplanted lungs that have been in your body and have been working, but all of a sudden now they're not. Your body's rejecting them. It was really hard watching Heather go through that. But again, I had to rely on my faith. I didn't, sometimes you quit.
Dialysis was similar, I compared to rejection, which is how it took such a toll on the body. And
Yeah.
mom did dialysis, so that's how I was able to do it at home.
That was kind of a stressful thing. Now, when after your second transplant, your lung transplant, when I went into that room and I saw you on life support, on the vent and on ECMO, and they had left you open, because you had so much bleeding, and they wanted to leave you open for a day or two to make sure. So if they had to go back in, you were already open. It was a little scary. It wasn't the same feeling I had after your first one when I went in there and you were just on the vent, just on the vent for a short time. It was, it was very scary to see you. Now, of course, Kelly, she had to make a little joke of it in a way because she was going to tell you, but she took a picture. But you were wrapped, and she said you looked like a roasted chicken because you had the wrap around you, and it looked like a roasted chicken was wrapped up. And she wanted to make you laugh when you woke up. But and then
I love it.
and then one of the hoses came loose and it freaks them out. So Kelly, she's there trying to get them. Well, let's just say they were there within seconds for the ECMO hose that popped loose. Thank gosh, it was not the one that the blood was flowing through. It was one that the air was flowing through. And so within seconds, they had it back on. But all these alarms were going off, and I just kept imagining that, okay, the blood's is circulating in and out the body through these tubes, but like I said, thank goodness it was not that one. But Heather stayed on that for several days. And then afterwards, she had trouble because, number one, that caused a little damage in her legs, and she couldn't walk as well. She had to learn to walk. She was trached, so 3 times after this transplant. She had to learn to speak again because she had gone with so many trachs, and that was another experience, leaving the hospital, learning how to take care of a trach, and if it got clogged. But we did go back to the apartment at weeks after her second transplant. We weren't there very long before she had complications, had to go back. We were only home a few days. And then she had lots of scares after that. And I wasn't sure that she was going to pull through, but she did. Again, prayers all over. We had people praying all the time anyway, but I asked for extra prayers. I even asked people in the hospital, would you please pray for her? And of course they did. And I believe in the power of prayer. And I believe that's what's gotten Heather to this point. And after that, Heather was doing so much better. She still had residual stuff that, from the second transplant. And then her kidneys took a hit and, spiraled. And of course, then she was on dialysis. And that was a really eye-opener, because we've been dealing with the lungs so long, really, with different things. And now throw the kidneys in there and dialysis. And I remember when Heather said, Mom, I want to do home dialysis. And I'm thinking, I'm too old for this. I got to learn all this. This is a lot to learn. And I had already heard.
But once again, we made it through it. And now this transplant has been the easiest one as far as recovery and stuff. But
yes,
Heather,
it was.
Heather,
It was just hard getting to that point. And I watched Heather. It was almost like the life draining out of Heather, because dialysis, some people do fine with it, but when you have CF and you have all these other things, and then you've already gone through other transplants, it just puts a real strain on the body. And I watched Heather go through all this. And, and then we went to class, and trying to learn all this stuff, it's a lot with dialysis. And, when those red alarms go off, you don't want to be in panic mode, but you know that you only have so many seconds to get this taken care of, because it could be deadly. And you have a manual and you're flipping through that, because sometimes the iPad that we had that would give us all this information on trying to tell you what to do would be out. The internet would not be working, and it would knock it out for, a little while. And so I'm going through a manual and I'm sitting there flipping through it. So what I did is I ended up having to tab it for different colors, what the red and what the yellow was, and then just the not so emergency ones were. So there are quite a few times that those alarms kept going off, and I didn't want her blood to clot, because we did have to stop several times, and I couldn't rinse the blood back in her, and she would lose a lot of blood that was through the machine, but it couldn't be helped. But I knew that every time she lost all that blood, it wasn't good for her. And but yes, we persevered through it. Now, the one time she had a little scare after we finished. She couldn't talk. She couldn't speak. I mean, it was like she just was paralyzed. And, I'm thinking, okay, I've only got this much time. I got to hurry up and get this done. And so, but we made it through it. And we got her through that little episode, and she was amazing through her transplant. I mean, everybody was like, "Oh my goodness, this girl's up walking around. She's out of here in 3 days, and she's walking up the steps at the end of the hallway. She's determined she's going home." But again, faith has carried her through, and Heather wrote some terrific songs through that time. And some inspirational songs that hopefully will help a lot of people Spotify, Amazon, and iTunes. You have to check it out. And also her book on Amazon from her talking about her first transplant. She's writing her second one. And I'm so very proud of her. And I am so proud of, um, you know, the woman that she's become and the inspiration she's become. And, it
Mom,
just helps me.
Mom's my MVP, so we're just a good team. And in our last remaining minutes, Champ, is there any like question you want to ask Mom?
Well, I know that we're gonna have to do a part two because we will. There's no, I'm not settled for that.
Mhm.
But I think it's interesting watching the two of you kind of co-team this. And Julie, I loved hearing you just encourage your daughter in front of the camera. I think it's sometimes it's hard for folks to like receive that kind of thing. You talk about it behind, not behind their back, but you talk about them outside of the light. And I think letting people see the kind of the combination between the two was really encouraging. What do you think has been the hardest thing for you as a mom, not just as Heather's, supporter, or what do you think has been the hardest thing for you? Do that. Go ahead.
Well, let's see. I guess watching Heather go through semi-traumatic things, and trying to keep myself in a upbeat mode and not lose hope and faith. But I draw my strength from Heather. Of course, the good Lord first. But I draw my strength from Heather, and Heather has pulled me through some things that I've had going on, going on with myself over time. Um, but uh, I just have to rely on my faith, and that's helped me take care of her. And I'm getting older, so Heather has to keep herself well so she can take care of me
Oh
in
goodness. Oh
reverse.
goodness. So, Heather, what does it do for you to hear from mom's perspective? Because I know we talk about it all the time, about what you've been through. And like, I think it, or at least it was for me to hear it. I heard it differently when I heard it from mom. And I hear it even differently when I hear it from you, Julie. So Heather, what does that do for you?
I mean, I've always called her the goat. I mean,
Right.
um, I truly thank the Lord because with her, and then obviously God, that's, I believe, what's kept me going. And, so I don't really know what other way to sum it up than that I just was blessed with the greatest one to help me get through it. And we just are a good team, and that's what it takes to be able to get through it. And so I know that some people don't have that relationship with their parent, but I do, so I'm really fortunate in that aspect.
Well, we're gonna stop this one, and we're gonna come back for part two because I've got some more questions that I want to walk through with Julie specifically, just because this whole interview has been so calm, and you've always been a calm soul, but you're just sharing from your heart, and I love it. And there's some other things that I want to get through. So we're gonna pause this one and come back. McCoy, this one is just been really good, and I told her as we ended part one that it was just such a calming story, and she was so at peace and sharing that. So she's gonna kind of finish up a little bit of her story, and then we're gonna jump into some questions. So Julie, take it away.
Okay. Thank you again for having me. Living the life of a child, with a child with an illness or any kind of disability. Um, People always say, well, how do you do it? How do you do it?
Mm.
Well,
Mm.
you rely on your faith.
Mm.
You learn all you can about what your child has. You try to make the situation be normal as possible so that the child will not feel like that they are so different. Heather did play softball one year. Now she couldn't run because she didn't have the air, but she was a good second baseman, and she could hit and catch. And so, I tried to let her do that. And of course, we found a friend of ours that's a wonderful coach, and she worked with Heather so that she could have the opportunity to play that season. So, of course, I was, the mom that stayed in the dugout and got everybody ready. So, because I had to be there, for if something happened. But I tried to let Heather be as normal as possible. There are times that we took vacations that we didn't get very far, that Heather got sick and we'd have to turn around and come back home. There was a time when Heather forgot her Pulmozyme, which is for her breathing treatment. And it was Thanksgiving. So, you couldn't have it shipped to you. So she was trying to make the best of it and just use a little bit of what she had until we could get home. And we had to cut our vacation short a little bit so we could get back home, because not every pharmacy carried that. It was a specialty. So you couldn't just have it, go to some pharmacy in Florida and they had it. We've been on vacation and been there a while. And like I said, have them cut short. But we tried to have a normal life, especially because of Kelly too, trying to have the family in a normal situation. And there were things that I had to watch out for, not having Heather around sick people. I didn't try to keep her in a bubble, but I tried to keep her as well as possible, and going to school was hard. And then, of course, we tried not to bring in germs. And people say Heather's a germaphobe, but, and I try to keep everything clean and sanitized. And, we try to, when we go out in public, even now coming back in and try not to bring in extra germs. And, if it goes to changing your clothes when you get home, not wearing your shoes in the house that you were outside, it's all kind of different things. And some people say, oh my gosh, you go to the extreme. Well, yes, but if you were in our situation, then with bringing in germs and worrying about Heather getting so sick, because it could spiral Heather into a rejection, or if she got that sick, or just different things. So, we've tried to adapt our life to being like that. Sometimes we don't have a lot of visitors. It's because, people bring in the germs. But I mean, it's, still trying to keep it as, normal as possible. But I couldn't ask for a better daughter, better friend, because I look at it that, she and I are friends. And spend a lot of time together.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but I think there's something there too. Do you think is it any different? And I probably know the answer to the question, but what's the difference from going from being the mother of the child to the adult now? Is that what's been that shift and transition like?
I'm probably, and your mom went through the same thing. It's hard to let go, to say, okay, and Heather will say, I still talk to her sometimes like she does, but I have to remind her dad. I do have to remind her dad that she's not 5 anymore. But I try to react as, okay, she's an adult. But then sometimes I do, and Heather will tell you, I'm saying, I'll fuss at her a little bit about, well, Heather, you let this, out, or you didn't do this or whatever. And I have to try to remind myself she's grown, she's a grown woman. She's not a child. She's my child. She always will be, and my baby. But Um, I try to treat her like an adult and not revert back to, the child, because
Mm.
she's still with us. She was living on her own at one time, but after she had rejection of her second lungs, and then of course her kid, during kidney failure, she's lived with us, and which that's okay with me. I get to have her around longer, and but and I know she, just like anyone else, she'd like that independence of being away, but it's just not feasible, right now. And but yeah, I kind of tell her sometimes she's in the household, so when I can't do things, she'll be able to pick up and do it for me.
But it really don't bother me living. I mean, some people it might, but it really don't bother me living with my parents because I mean, it's just kind of like my safe zone, and I don't have to worry about the stresses of the world that most people that would be out on their own would have to worry about.
Love that. I love that. Do you think, Heather or Julie, that how has it been for Kelly? Because I know we talked about it with our episode with Leighton. How do you think it's been for Kelly? And do you think that like does Kelly ever seem to be kind of the mother hen? Because I know Leighton, and in our situation being a little bit different with Dad being gone, like Leighton now for some reason thinks he has to be kind of the protector or the man of the house. Maybe because I don't know. I guess he thinks I can't do it, but that's just him. But do you think that's been a little bit of a challenge or not for y'all? Because I know everybody's story is different. So
Um, Kelly has always been a nurturer.
okay.
She's always, she loves people. She loves taking care of people. That's why she's in the medical, field
Hmm.
now. But she, you know, yes, there are times when I couldn't do things or we couldn't do things because of Heather, but Kelly never resented that.
Yeah.
She understood it. I mean, I know that people say, well, she was a child. I mean, she was a young child, but I mean, she was 8, but I mean, she understood enough that, sometimes we're not able to do these things or we're not able to go to these places. And again, like I said, I went to as many things as I could possibly do. We even followed her to New York when she was in the Macy's parade. I mean, it's like we tried to do things as long as Heather was able to go. And or there are sometimes that I left Heather with, my mom or something, and I would, uh, go places with Kelly. But Kelly helped take care of Heather, not because I asked her to. It's because she wanted to. And matter of fact, Heather took care of Kelly one time. Kelly was sick, and I had to go to the store to get some more stuff for Kelly, and we didn't realize that Kelly was going to have a reaction to a medication she had because she had taken it before. Well, Heather jumps in, and as a young child of about, I think Heather may have been 7 at that time, um, to call me and say, "Hey, Mom, you got to come home," but she knew what to do with Kelly at the time, having that reaction. She knew to go get Benadryl because I didn't have anything else, but she went and got Benadryl and gave it to Kelly until I got home, you know, with the reaction. So, um, and they fought. I mean,
Did
sisters.
they? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, Heather was a little sister that got in, was around and got into Kelly's stuff sometimes, and you know, hung out with her friends. But mostly they didn't argue. I mean, they got along really well. And I think to this day that because of the way Kelly was with Heather, that's how she's become the woman she is today, and be so caring and loving and compassionate to people. And so I, you know, um, if the Lord had to give me two children, um, I'm so glad He gave me the two I have, because they really both are extraordinary women, and very strong and independent women, and very faithful. So
Heather or Julie, what do you think it's been like? Because I know that like you're in a couple of seasons ahead of me with nieces and nephews, and so they play a role in this story too. I think the whole family does. Each person in the family gets kind of a different perspective, but you've had the nieces and nephews idea of like them growing up watching Aunt Heather with, challenges and health concerns. And what would you say to those things, Heather or Julie? Either one, whoever wants to
I
take it.
think so. Obviously, if you're a parent, you can't control, and you never like to, and cystic fibrosis people have this, especially like we're such sensitive people, and the fact that we know things can change in a moment. So, like, you never want hurt feelings or arguments, or just like you think everything needs to be resolved that day. Like, you just don't like silly things. And I think for me, it was hard at first wrapping my head around, well, my nieces and nephews have to understand that maybe one day I'm not going to be here, or one day they're going to see me have to say no to not coming to some of their events, which I have had to do. They're going to know that Aunt Heather is different in the way that she can't be around a ton of my friends, or, for germ reasons, or, she just may not be able to be as present physically. But they also know I'm here for them and love them. But I think it gives them a perspective, because just like with my siblings, it helps people understand. And until you live it where you know it's a reality, a lot of people in the world live as if it's just some fairy tale that nothing ever goes wrong. And by them having somebody in their family that's close to them with something, it helps them to grow with compassion, and to know that if they see somebody in a wheelchair, they see somebody with CF, or they see somebody with cancer, or whatever it may be, that they're going to have a different perspective and treat that person more like they should, as normal. Maybe be friends with them, maybe help them know that they're not alone in the world, and that they're going to be a friend, or they are going to see the world differently. That, yeah, life is good, but there can also be people that have it harder than I have it. And I think that it just helps shape them, especially their young minds as they're growing older, to know that they have to be grateful for their health. They have to be grateful for their, physical, not having any limitations, and just being able to live, and know that some people don't have that amount of luxury to kind of be carefree in a sense.
Julie, you want to add anything to that or not? You don't have to. I'm just giving you the opportunity.
I think that, we've tried to um, really explain as best we can, especially when the children were younger. Of course, they're all teenagers now, and some of them going to college, and some of them will be graduating here in the next 1 to 3 years. They're all back to back. But when they were younger, especially Addison, when she lived with us, she saw how Aunt Heather had to do treatments. So we tried to explain to her, you know, about Aunt Heather's breathing and why she was having to do this. And of course, Addison was there when Heather had her first transplant. And for a 5-year-old to sit there all that time, I mean, hours and hours, I mean, like 12, 14 hours, um, she was just amazing. But she knew, and she prayed with me. that Aunt Heather would be okay. But she, we tried to make it to where they understood that Aunt Heather may not be able to lift you up and run and play with you like you want her to. But she, she was able to do a lot of things, but not the strenuous type things. Um, and Heather took a lot of time with them when she could. She would take them for ice cream, or she would, get in the pool with them when they would come. But we did try to explain that. And I went back to when Heather was in UNC Children's Hospital. Um, I wanted Heather to realize that there were other things than CF. When Heather was growing up, like I said, you didn't have the internet like we do now. You didn't have like Zoom, all this Zoom and FaceTime and everything else that people could do that had the same thing and could talk to each other. There weren't a lot of parents that I knew that their children had it, that you could talk to. But I took the side that we were on was the CF side of the floor. And the opposite side was the children's cancer. And this one little boy, he had been there for months and months and months. And they called his room his apartment because they had been staying there so long. The little Archie. And he rode in a wagon. His mom would pull him around the floors. And he would come by and wave to you and just smile and smile and smile, even though the child was going through so much. And I wanted Heather to see that there were other things and other children that had to go through difficult times and with their health, that she was not alone. They didn't have CF, but yet, they still had something they had to deal with. And so I tried to take some of that and show my grandchildren that there were other people that suffered with things that they didn't have to go through, and to always be compassionate and always be understanding. And, when other people want to make fun of somebody because they can't do anything, don't go along with that. Know that there's a difference and know that that's not right. And, I think they have really learned a lot, because they would say, we pray for Aunt Heather. We know she's not well. And, we love her, and but we pray for her and we want her to be well. And that's what they would tell me when they were younger. And and of course they asked me why, why was she sick?
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to explain. And I said, well, God made her special.
And one time my nephew Landon told Mom that he wanted to give all his money that he had saved up if it would buy me lungs. And of course, she had to explain that it didn't work that way, but that was still really sweet. But I've also got on all of them that are dramatic, like saying these typical teen sayings that, that the life's just falling apart, or it's not good, or they're just off the wall dramatic, and I'll set them straight in a minute. And they know I will, like, don't talk like that. Things are good, you're not at death's door, things are going to improve. Just get your mind right. And they know I do it out of love, but it kind of snaps them back into reality, like, oh yeah, I am being dramatic. I shouldn't say things. And as they've gotten older, they don't say too much of that stuff anymore.
I, I think it's so funny for me though to watch the two of you interact, because as I've said over and over today, you, Julie, have been so just calm and peaceful, and then Heather's got a little bit of spunkiness in her, and you're just kind of poised and let's just go with it. And she's like, well, I'll sit them down in one skinny minute and tell them how it really is now. You know, you're being a little overly dramatic now, dude. You need to
Because probably because what I had done with, I mean, we both have talked about that. That's how we were raised. Our parents would set us straight in a minute.
calm. Heather, are there any questions you have for mom?
No, because I think I pretty much understand my mom a lot, and she understands me. And as I said, I thank the Lord every single day. I have the one I have, and that we've been able to. We're not going to say there hasn't been stressful, and Lord knows I have enough anxiety sometimes for the whole family. But um, knowing that you have to make it one day at a time. I don't try to look at it as, well, let's make it looking at 6 months. I tell people all the time I can't plan for 6 months ahead. That doesn't mean I'm being negative. It just means I have to take one day, one week at a time, and there's gonna be storms, there's gonna be hardships, and I think through it all, like right now, last week, couple levels are off. I'm having anxiety. I'm not feeling so good. But I also know that God's in control. I have a mom that if we had to go to the doctor, we're going to the doctor. But I also know that what you feel in the moment, and your mom even said this too shall pass. There's always going to be highs and lows, and you just have to learn how it's okay to feel it. It's okay to want to scream, cry, be frustrated, be discouraged, be disappointed things are at where it's at, but you can't stop being grateful at the same time, and just know that each day is another start. And just because you may not be having the best day doesn't mean tomorrow can't. And I think it would be much harder for me to be able to remember that if I didn't have mom, because mom kind of, if my anxiety spiraling, she'll say, all right, Heather, you're not sounding like yourself. Let's snap out of this. Let's get back on track. Things are not falling apart. And even in the hospital, that's what she did. I mean, you know, whether it was banging on the side of a bed to get her attention while I had a trach in and couldn't talk, or just sitting there and making the time pass when I was in the hospital. It's just having that system, and it doesn't have to just be in the hospital. It's every day of my life, and knowing I have somebody that drops everything and is just there. Even if I say, hey mom, I don't feel good, I really don't want to ask you to have to come home from the store, but I just want somebody here. She comes home from the store. So I mean, but we also have a lot of joyful times together too. And I say, even like she's my travel buddy, she's my concert buddy, and we just enjoy things together. And I feel really, really blessed to have that relationship, because like I said, a lot of people in life don't. And so I'm grateful for that.
Well, I have just thoroughly enjoyed this, and I know that those who watch this and listen to this will. Julie, is there anything what would you say to somebody if you had to give like a little short TED talk or a little blurb of like this is how you get through it? What would you say? Like how would you encourage the younger version of you in those moments that you kind of come out of now? Or if somebody was put in front of you that had a child or an adult patient with cystic fibrosis or a terminal illness or whatever the case may be, what would you say? Like, what would you say to them, wishing that somebody would have said to you?
Well, first of all, unfortunately, not everybody is spiritual, and believe. But I would hope that they would come to that point. But I would say always look at it that tomorrow's another day. Um, some days are not great, but look at it that yes, you might have it bad, but there's always someone else that has it worse off. I mean, you might think that it couldn't get any worse, but yes, it can.
Mm.
So I always told Heather and Kelly that even if we're going through the deepest, darkest, worst time, that just look and know that there's always someone else that may be going through that in a worse way. Um, and there's always hope for tomorrow, to be better. Um, but you have to pull that strength from inside. Um, and Heather always says about me being strong. I don't look at myself like that. I don't see myself as, because people always say, well, you're just so strong. You're just this, that, and the other. I'm human. And I try to keep any anxiety or anything under check. But everybody gets anxious. I was really anxious during the car accident we had recently, thinking that, oh my gosh, Heather's gone through all this. That was my first thing. Heather's gone through all this, and what if something's happened? And as a mother, you always worry about your child more than you do yourself, and always put yourself on the back burner. But um, just look forward. I always like that little sign that Heather has that says, the devil says you can't make it through the storm, and the warrior says, I am the storm. You know,
I love
I
that.
like that because, um, the devil tempts us to, not to believe the worst, and not look to the light, and not look, to our faith. And I just like that. I like that's where you can draw strength from is, your faith. And like I said, not everybody is like that, but I just pray for them all the time that everybody will come to know that. Um, but yeah,
Heather,
it's it.
any final thoughts? Because I've loved this and can't wait for these will probably be two. I'm thinking this will be 2 weeks back to back, but we've really enjoyed it and I've really enjoyed it. Heather, anything you want to add or wrap up with?
Just praise be to God for miracles and life and just having the mother I have to I think, God doesn't make mistakes and he knew the type of mother I would have to survive. And I think that there's no price tag you could put on that for, he knows it all and what it'll take. And so I think that's all there is to it is everything you go through is a testimony, and we certainly have one.
I love it. I love it. And I love the smiles behind it. So, well, we just want to say thank you for joining us today. And we hope that you're encouraged. We hope that you're inspired. And we hope that you kind of get a glimpse into not only Heather's story, but Heather's mom's story. And what does it mean to be a champion, even in the midst of struggles. Hope that you'll join us next week for our next episode of the Champions Podcast. And without that, we just want to leave you with a little bit of hope, a little bit of joy, and a little bit of love, and just a little bit of grace. So take care. God bless.